What is up, y'all? We have made it to the Valley Season 2 Reunion Part 1. I got a lot of notes. Shout out to y'all. I am officially back from vacation. Birthday, 30 years old now. Shout out to y'all who have waited for me. Please, thumbs up the video. Y'all killed it. The last episode we did, the finale, best view video that I have so far for the season. So let's keep that energy. Thumbs up the video. Drop your comments. Subscribe. Share the video. Because we got two more parts. We got the part 2 tomorrow. That will be on time. Because I'm going to finish all of my stuff that I have to catch up on today so I can be ready for that tomorrow. But yeah, we got part 2 and then we got part 3 next week and then the season's done. But yeah, shout out to all of y'all who have been here with me all season and have joined me throughout the season. Let's stay locked in because we got a season 3 coming, which we probably won't get until next year. But stay locked to the channel because I got other stuff going on too. I'm still gonna be in the Bravo verse. I'm probably gonna start watching Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. I'm gonna start doing that. Potomac, I know when that comes back, I'm probably gonna try and do that as well. Trying to stay in the Bravo verse, so stay with me. I got shit going on, but let's go because I got a lot of notes. A lot. All right, so we start off at the reunion. Andy does what he always does. He does his greetings, talking to everybody. He pretty much asks Brittany, like, is this the longest that you and Jax will have spent together in the last year? And she's like, yeah, it will be. And if y'all see this blinking stuff, it's my software. I'm going to figure it out once I get everything, all of my stuff caught up whenever I get all my recaps together. So just bear with me throughout this. But Michelle, she has moved in with Aaron recently. Isabella is pretty much with them half the time. And she spends the other time with Jesse, but she says that Isabella is happy. Jax is over there making side comments talking about that's not true. But Kristen, she is pregnant at the time. As we know, they filmed this before the season. I feel like they filmed this the second or third episode into the season, which I thought was crazy. But she was pregnant at the time, 33 weeks and 3 days. Luke feels like he was unprepared coming to that reunion because they're not really prepared on if something might possibly happen. But Nia is also there. She's pregnant, 34 weeks. So they're a week apart. And Jax is over there looking bothered already. Like, he is so pressed when it comes to Danny and Nia. But Jasmine and Melissa, we find out they're engaged and getting married next summer. Janet has lost weight. She claims it's because of Adderall and Pilates. I wouldn't doubt that. But Jason is wearing his wedding ring. Good for you, Jason. Good for you. But Andy, he starts it off talking about Kristen being the voice of reason this season, which she has been. Like, she truly has been. I feel like the Valley has been Kristen's redemption arc. And I feel like season 1, she was validated this season. Like, everything she said on season 1 came to light on season 2. So she really has been the voice of reason for the entire franchise, if you want to keep it real. But she was like, who would have thought? And I'm like, yeah, because like I told y'all all throughout the season, I wasn't a fan of Kristen on Vanderpump Rules. So for her to get on here and really being a good person and really seeing that good side of her, I really appreciate that. But she says, like, I still had one moment of crazy Kristen, but that version of crazy Kristen is retired at this point, but she still got a little bit of that energy in her. But she apologizes. She said there was one thing that she regrets that she did this season, and she apologizes to Janet about saying that she's going to knock her out. I wouldn't have apologized, but she did. She's a bigger person than me. She also apologized about calling her a whore because it's not true. But Kristen then states, like, watching it back with Luke, I was like, is that kind of crazy? And he was like, yeah, it is kind of crazy. But Janet, she appreciates the apology. Let's see if she has the same energy for Kristen throughout as well with Danny and Nia. Let's see if she has that same energy for them. And even to a certain extent, Jasmine. See if she has that energy for them throughout the reunion. We'll get to it. But Jax and Brittany, they haven't been divorced yet. They're still going through the process. Brittany, they say he had called her telling her that he didn't want to pretty much finalize everything because he didn't know he was getting fired from the show, which we know he has been, thank God. And he was like, I'm prolonging it so I can get me some alimony. Classic Jax. I wasn't shocked to hear that. But he says that's somewhat true. Kristen was like, Brittany doesn't lie. So what are you talking about somewhat true? So Jax says that he had prolonged it because of the podcast feed. And Brittany's like, that's not what you said. I literally said what you said verbatim to me. But he then states that we can just agree on what you said because you said it. That's really what it is. But Andy then moves to Jesse and Michelle. Like, what are y'all's goals for tonight? So he then states that there was a constant battle between the two of them. This is Jesse. It was a constant battle between the two of us on trying to beat each other and try and win on each other, which it was. And of course, Michelle was sitting there denying it. And he was like, no, you were literally trying to do so. And he's right. She was trying to one up him. It's like, but he also was doing the same thing too. At least he had the decency and being able to hold himself accountable to at least admit that it was the same on both ends. Michelle always acts like she is a victim in every situation, and it's not. But she says, when what? And he was like, I mean, you the one that told people, saying that people, no matter what I do, people love you. Talking about Jesse. And she says, like, you have this charm that makes people like you. And he was like, okay, so why were you doing what you were doing to try to make people not like me? And she's like, I really don't care if people love or hate you. I said, that's not true, because if that's the case, you would have never said that. Like, you would have never said that. But Andy, he then moves to the new additions to the Valley family, which is Kristen and Nia's soon-to-be born babies, which we know they're here, thank God. But Kristen talks about her pregnancy, and she was like, it's now at the point in her pregnancy where she's like, it's going to be kind of weird not being pregnant anymore, because she's pretty much towards the end. And she was like, watching the end of the season, seeing how distraught we were about possibly not getting pregnant and having to go through all those different channels to get pregnant. I just feel super lucky right now. And Andy then asked, like, when did y'all find out that y'all were pregnant? And we find out that it was 2 weeks after filming. I was like, damn, that would have been good to put the cameras back up. But then again, it's like, how would they know? But then again, when Kristen took the pregnancy test, I feel like they should have got them cameras. Shit, as soon as she knew she was about to take that pregnancy test, get them cameras up. That's what I would have liked to have seen. But Luke was like, the first trimester was fun. The second trimester was okay. Well, he said the first trimester wasn't fun. Like, Kristen ain't used to that. So the second trimester was good, but now she's just in a lot of pain, obviously, because she's getting super close to delivering. But Kristen was like, I mean, we had 10 good weeks, essentially. But Andy then asked, like, what do you think helped you get pregnant? And she was like, the hormones and the IUI. And he then ends up asking about the wedding planning. Are y'all even doing that? They're both like, no, we ain't even started that yet. We want to actually have the baby first. And then we want to enjoy being engaged. And then we'll worry about that. So Janet then states that she feels like Kristen will be a great mom because she's a good dog mom. That's the first step. It's pretty much showing that you can care for somebody and love for something. And Kristen thanks her. But we then move to Nia and Danny. They're pregnant with baby number 4. Nia says this time has actually been great for her. Her second pregnancy had so many complications because it was twins. I'm a twin if y'all don't know that. But she was like, this one has been peaceful. And she feels like she's been able to actually enjoy this one, especially considering the fact that it's her last one. Like, she 4 and done. That's it. But Andy then asked Danny, like, why are y'all having another baby considering all the complaining that you did about the lack of sleep that you had with 3 kids under 3? Which, I mean, shit, it makes sense. But Danny jokes and states that I didn't plan it. She leg locked me. But he jokes about that. And he jokes stating that if anybody needs a vasectomy, like, let's do it together. And the guys state like they can do that too. But Brittany ends up making a side comment stating that Jax needs to get one. She ain't lying. And Jax says that he wants to, but Brittany was like, yeah, because you're going to have 20 baby mamas if he doesn't do it. I said, you better clock him. And of course, Kristen high-fives her. But Andy then asked, like, do you even use birth control? And Jax is like, birth control? That just tells you everything. He just be raw dogging everything. Condoms are birth control. That's what Kristen said. Condoms, hello? Like, what? But Brittany then says, like, he's disgusting. I wouldn't touch that dirty dick with a 10-inch pole. And Jax was like, I mean, you didn't say, it's not like you didn't say that you would 4 months ago. Like, you've been trying to hook up with me at Hooters. I can believe that. I believe what he's stating in regards to that. But she says, I mean, it's doubtful. But now that I know what you got going on, I wouldn't do that. I hope she wouldn't. But he was like, I mean, you hooked up with an OnlyFans model who be effing P stars. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And she was like, I mean, you do it too. I said, so y'all literally are one and the same. Y'all literally are one and the same. But he then states that she's got condoms all over the floor and stuff. And she's like, at least I know how to use them. And they like, yeah, safe sex. But that's the thing with Jax. That's why she said what she said. Like, you're going to have 20 baby mamas. She ain't going to be popping out kids because she at least knows contraception. But Nia and Kristen, we found out they bonded even more throughout their pregnancies, which I love because throughout this season, we really got to see their bond. Like, Kristen really took up for Nia this season. And you could tell they've gotten even more close, which I love that for them because they're 2 of my favorites on this show. But Nia's been helping her through it because Nia's already been through pregnancies. She has been through the good and the bad of pregnancy. So she's kind of helping Kristen on what possibly could happen, how to get out of those situations that Nia was in. But Nia, Andy ends up asking her about like postpartum, like, because we know she experienced it the last pregnancy. And he's like, do you feel nervous about it? And she's like, no, I'm not nervous because this time around, I'm not nervous about it. She said, I feel like it was me having twins, but I hope it doesn't happen again. But if it does happen again, I'm going to be okay because I have a good support system. But Andy then talks about the pressures that she puts on herself about her body image. And he was like, it breaks my heart. And it's like, yeah, because Nia is beautiful. Like, naturally beautiful. She's everything she got going on, I don't think she needs to change it. But I mean, Nia is Nia. And if Nia feels like she needs to do that to feel good about herself, that's what she got to do. But I feel like she's beautiful in her natural state. But she was like, being in LA, it just, I mean, you feel the pressure. And it's okay to want to feel good in your own skin and give yourself grace at the same time. But Nia is planning her mommy makeover. Brittany and Kristen said they will join her on it. But she essentially wants to get her boobs done. But Kristen and Nia, which I mean, I can understand that. She has 4 kids now. And it seems like she's breastfeeding. So, I mean, I guess she needs a lift. She's going to get it. But Kristen, we find out Kristen and Nia's due dates are 1 week apart. They're delivering in the same hospital as well. And Andy ends up asking, like, seeing them pregnant, do you feel like, and he's asking Michelle, seeing them pregnant, do you feel like you want to have another kid? And she was like, I mean, sometimes, but not really. But she was talking about how Aaron wants to have multiple kids, and she was like, I turned that down immediately. I do want to help and do want to give him a child, but multiples, I don't know about that. But Andy then asks if they'll get engaged. She then says, like, there's no rush, but that's the goal, essentially. And y'all, if y'all can really get through this with me with that blinking and stuff, it's distracting me, but I will have it fixed next Tuesday. I'm gonna try and have it fixed tomorrow. But yeah, so Andy then pivots to Jesse and Michelle and their issues from last season and what was really the tipping point that made her go ahead and file for divorce. So she was like, I mean, I was tired of him pretty much diminishing me, putting me down, talking shit to me, talking crazy to me. And she was like, I just didn't want to be married to somebody who treats me like that every single day. And she decided to do it at their anniversary, pretty much to ask him for a divorce. I said, that is so petty. So petty. Both of them are petty. Both of them are petty. But Andy ends up asking Jesse, like, has y'all's co-parenting gotten any better? And he was like, I mean, we're good with decisions when it comes to Isabella, but Michelle likes to weaponize Isabella. He denies it. She denies it. And then he says, yeah, you do that. Both of y'all do, but we'll get to it in a minute. But he then tells her, like, you need to read comments online. And Andy's like, I mean, it's not up to the comments, and he's not lying. It's not up to the comments, even though some of the stuff that's being told about Michelle is true. But it's like you can't base what's going on in your life based off of what people that are watching you do. Granted, you can take heed to what they're talking about, because some of the shit that is being stated, you do need to see yourself. But like, don't base your life off of what people are seeing and thinking of you. But Andy says that, and she's like, I mean, I love my daughter. I would never do that. And he then explain what you said to my mom. And she ends up stating, I said, if you're not going to allow her to see my dying mother, which is her grandmother, she's not flying to Boston pretty much ever again. And she didn't say ever again until he forced her to say it. But I don't see nothing wrong with that, honestly, because like I stated during the season, when she talked about how he was pretty much trying to prevent Isabella from going to see her grandmother, who was on her, pretty much dying at that point, which means you don't know when's the last time you'll be able to see her. So at this point, you do need to go spend as much time with her as you can, as that's her grandmother. So I was fully on Michelle's side, and I still am in regards to that. Nia and Janet pretty much state, like, that's how she should feel about it. I would feel the same way. They're not wrong. But they then tell him, like, you got to find a way to provide a little bit of empathy for her. But she then states that that's how I have to talk to you, essentially, for it to work, because it did work. But Jesse then states, but you weaponized Isabella. And Nia says that her mother was dying. Like, you need to, like, what do you mean? And he was like, I mean, I understand that, but like, I never said that she couldn't see her dying grandmother. But he then states that she, talking about Michelle, had planned a trip to go to Italy with Aaron and wanted to split up the 2 weeks that she was gone, with him having Isabella, with her sister having. So her sister's going to have her 1 week, and he going to have her 1 week. So he didn't like that. He states that he had hired a behavioral therapist, and she's like, no, we did. And she was like, I mean, they told you that you needed to give me grace and you need to allow Isabella to go see my mom. And he didn't do it. But Andy then asked, like, what's the status of y'all's divorce? And she was like, we have a custody agreement right now. We're working on a settlement. I have a lawyer. He doesn't. And she was like, essentially, he's representing himself. He feels like he knows the law. He feels like he knows what's going on, basically, because he ain't got no money. That's basically what she stated. And he was like, he knows because he feel like he knows what's going on because he watched Suits. I said, please, be for real. That's the quickest way to lose some money. But Andy then states that it should be a clean divorce because there's no assets or anything. So like, what's the issue? And she was like, I mean, he got mad. This is so, again, petty. Like, she was petty earlier. He's petty here. She says he got mad because she had spent the money during their marriage and he wants her to pay back the money. And he's sitting there denying it. She stands on it, which I think is it's so crazy. Like, you gonna ask her. And it's like, I mean, I get why he's mad and I get why he wants to be petty because you cheated on me. So at that point, you cheating on me in our marriage makes it seem like our marriage doesn't mean anything. So everything that happened in that marriage, I want that annulled. So give me my money back. I see where he's coming from. I wouldn't do that, though. That's petty. That's stupid. Like, and it does make you look broke and it makes you look cheap, especially as the man asking a woman for money that y'all spent together while y'all were in the marriage. Like, what? But Brittany whispers to Andy to ask about the wedding, and he does. And Jesse states that they had a conversation about Jesse pretty much making more money at the time. So basically, they would pretty much split stuff. That's basically what he was stating. But Kristen was like, Jesse wants her to pay back the money for the wedding. I'm like, again, petty, petty. So Andy then asked, like, did you pay for the wedding? And Michelle was like, I mean, I paid 40% of the wedding. Jesse was like, no, you only paid $10,000. She denies it. Their wedding total was $150K. So if he's saying that she paid $10,000, is that even 10%? But I don't know who I believe. Who do y'all believe? But Andy then asked at the time, were you willing to pay? And he says, like, we discussed splitting it. And Andy says, so you want her to now pay for the wedding now? And Kristen was like, I mean, that's basically asking to give gifts back. Like, you give somebody a present and you asking them to give it back because you mad. And it's like, right, you can't, like, it does not work that way. But he then states, like, our relationship has basically been some tit for tat ass shit. And it has. And that's the problem. Like, y'all are too grown to be doing this. But Andy then asked them to pretty much call it even. And the girls are like, Michelle's been trying to do that. But Jesse ends up asking to speak. And he says, like, I mean, I reached out to my attorney. I reached out to her attorney on how to move forward because my life is a mess. And I want her to move on with Aaron. That's what he's claiming. But he then says that he has reached out to his attorney. This was funny. She was like, you don't even have an attorney. Janet was like, aren't you representing yourself? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, so you spoke to yourself. I'm like, and Andy was like, so you spoke to yourself. And he's like, no, I have consultants that I work with. But Andy then asked how things are with Jesse's little girlfriend that's in the OC. And he was like, things are good. So Andy then asked Michelle, like, do you even have a relationship with her? Do you want one? She says, I don't have a relationship with her and I don't want to. I don't want to have communication with her. We know why she doesn't. But Jesse then says that his girlfriend took the initiative to set boundaries with Michelle. And it's like, I'm on Michelle's side with this too, because, like, I don't care about your girlfriend. Like, especially considering the fact that as they started, and as we all know, this all started whenever they were 1 month into their relationship. You can't call me setting boundaries about shit when you don't even have a solid foundation in your own relationship. Like, y'all are literally just dating at this point. Y'all not even really in a relationship. Even if y'all have a title, you don't know nobody in 1 month. Like, for real. But Andy then says, like, 1 month into a relationship, that seems pretty new. And he was like, yeah, because she was spending a lot of time with Isabella. And that's the problem, Jesse. You are so comfortable introducing somebody to your daughter in 1 month, but you have an issue with her with Aaron. It makes no sense. But Michelle then says, like, I mean, I told him, and we pretty much had this agreement that the boyfriends and girlfriends shouldn't be around and involved in our parenting, which is true, and I agree with that. But Brittany then says, like, y'all had an agreement to keep Isabella away from y'all significant others. So Michelle didn't have her around Aaron, but you had her around your girlfriend. And then when Michelle wanted to start having Aaron around Isabella, you then had a problem with it. Which, I mean, Brittany got a point. So Brittany then says, like, you said you had your girlfriend spending time and spending the night with Isabella, and then having Isabella call Michelle talking about your girlfriend is out here braiding her hair. How do you think that's gonna make her feel? Valid. But Jesse then says, I'm glad that I'm glad y'all got one side of the story pretty much being condescending. Like, you only hear Michelle's side, which, I mean, for the most part, a lot of the times they do take over Michelle. But I do believe Michelle in this instance, honestly. But Brittany was like, is that not true? And he was like, well, the story is that Michelle said that she can introduce her daughter to whoever. And Michelle was like, yeah, I said that when the time is right. I told you that you can meet him, whoever the dude will be. But you sat there trying to tell me that I can never introduce a man to my daughter. So that's pretty much why she said what she said. But Brittany says, I mean, I literally saw the messages between y'all. And he states that he felt like it was different introducing a girl to a mom / girlfriend who was his girlfriend, because apparently she's a mom too. He feels like it's different doing that when it comes to her introducing it to a man. It's just like, I mean, no, it's really no difference. I mean, I understand because you feel like a girl, but then again too, like things can happen with women too. So it's just like at the end of the day, Jesse, you ain't got no leg to stand on with this. Just like stand down. I'm fully on Michelle's side with this. But Michelle and Brittany, they pretty much stated that the rules are not the same, clearly, because Janet says essentially it's sexist. But Jax butts in. Why are you talking? And he's saying like you just wanted to be in a relationship for a while before introducing another partner. I said that's the problem with Jesse. He was only in a relationship with this girl for 1 month before he introduced Isabella to her. Like that's wild. But Andy then asked about the rumors. Hold on, I'm about to burp. Andy then asked Jesse like about the rumors of his girlfriend saying negative shit about him, and he doesn't believe it, which I believe is true. I believe that he doesn't want to believe it. I feel like he knows it's true, but he doesn't want to believe it. He's trying to force himself to not believe it. But Brittany didn't say it's like, I mean, I don't think she really likes Jesse like that, because I've heard her talk crazy shit about him to the point where I feel bad. And Janet backs it up. But Andy then asked like, if you think Brittany's making this shit up. And he was like, it's a perfect narrative to kind of spin for Michelle. And Brittany's like, I mean, I'm not even making this shit up. I even felt bad hearing the shit. And he then tells her like, don't worry about me. That's how you know that he knows that it's true. But Andy then mentions Janet stating that the girl was pretty much threatening legalities against Michelle. And Janet was like, that's what it was for me. That's when it happened, because she was trying to silence Michelle. Jesse was like, no, it was a cease and desist. That is silencing her. Like, what you mean? But he was like, she didn't try to take money like Aaron did. And Michelle was like, Aaron did not even take $1. Jesse was like, yeah, but he showed up quite a bit on this show. But Andy ends up asking Jesse if he thinks that Michelle is anxious to finalize her divorce so she can go ahead and get married to Aaron and start another family. And he was like, I mean, if that's the case, that's fine. Good. Like, at this point, let her go on. Like, I feel like I can't stand when people try and drag a divorce. Like, if both parties equally want it to be done with it. Like, get it done. But he then states that Andy ends up asking if Jax, like, when yours and Brittany's finalizes, will you feel like it'll be hard for you? And he's like, yeah. And Brittany was like, I mean, but he sits and starts fights with me every single day about everybody I'm around, any man that I'm around. And Andy was like, why? And he was like, I'm trying to work on it. Kristen was like, yeah, you can work on it, but work on that shit with you. You don't have to tell her that. Don't talk to her about that shit. So, where am I at? He then claims that he's been to 4 different therapists, and then they show just the montage of him in therapy sessions over the last decade or so, almost 2 decades, when he was on Vanderpump Rules. Vanderpump Rules came out in 2011, I want to say, and we're almost in 2026. He's been on TV for 15 years getting therapy and hasn't found one that works. It's not the therapist. They're not the issue. It's him. But, Jasmine and Zack are making side comments talking about something. He pulls out his Google Maps and he's doing Chat GPT. But they start showing a flashback, like I stated. And he then says that he didn't listen to Brittany because Brittany had been telling him all those years that they were together that he needed to pretty much get a therapist. He didn't listen, so he finally went to rehab, trying to play the victim shit. But Andy then asked Brittany if any of the Monday sessions improved anything with her when it comes to his anger. And she was like, no. And I believe her. But Andy then talks about Jesse's bromance with Kristen and Luke. And he talks about how Kristen essentially made the first step, sending him a nice warm text. And he started thinking about his role last year with Kristen and Luke, how he was acting a plumb fool, talking crazy to them. But Kristen then states that when he had pretty much asked her to come over, she went over because she was curious, like, what's going on? Like, the curiosity in me made me want to go see what was going on. She obviously had Luke, and Luke was like, do you want me to go? And she's like, no, I'm good. But she pretty much states like he pretty much owned up to shit, apologized. There was no but following it, which we all know when you apologize and then have but, that completely negates everything that you stated before. So he was pretty much taking accountability for how he had acted, and she saw that as genuine. Michelle then states that I found it ironic and interesting because he knew what you thought about. I knew what he thought about you talking about Kristen before that. And Kristen was like, yeah, but you know how I felt about him too. And Michelle was like, yeah, I mean, he's befriending you to make me upset. And Kristen was like, I mean, I don't allow him to speak ill on you in my presence. He hasn't done that, but if he was, it wouldn't fly. And Michelle was like, I mean, I believe that he tries to manipulate you. Kristen says, I'm not easily manipulated. Like, I make conscious decisions myself. That is true. But Andy then says that people think that you're essentially cold and insensitive talking to Michelle. And she was like, I'm naturally guarded, which she definitely, you can tell she is. And she was like, it's hard for me to cry. Jesse can do it on command. She got a point. She then states that it's easier to connect with somebody who's crying and being vulnerable. That is true as well. I struggle with tears too. Like, I struggle with crying. I struggle with being complete. I don't want to say I struggle with being vulnerable, but I low-key do. But yeah, I mean, I feel Michelle. But Michelle then says that, Kristen then talks about the conversation that they had. I think it was in the finale when they had that kind of like heart-to-heart moment where they actually made progress. And Michelle was like, yeah, we had that moment, but it went south the same day. I wonder what happened, why we didn't see it. But Andy then asked if Jesse has always been a crier, that he is. And he was like, yeah, I have been. And he guarantees that there are going to be more tears throughout the night. And Andy was like, are they going to be real? And he says they always are. Michelle's over there making faces. Janet then says it's quite interesting, though, because in one of those scenes when y'all were talking, when she was like, come on, when you were starting to cry, them tears dried up real quick. And Zack said what I was thinking. Literally, under his breath, he was like, we can say the same shit about you. Exactly. Pot calling the kettle black. But Jesse then states that those tears were during like the first holidays that they were not going to spend together, which is essentially why he was so emotional. But Jason backs him up. No one cares about Jason. But Andy, he moves to Nia and Danny. They moved into Santa Clarita. They had their house. He asked Nia, like, what sold you on it? She's like, the space. We got 5 bedrooms. Get up in that house, Nia. But they state that it's 20 minutes away from, they state that it's not 20 minutes away from the valley like they claimed, like Danny claimed it was. But Nia was like, we're closer to the valley than I thought. Jasmine did not sell them the house. So Andy then transitions into the boys' chat. Let me get a drink of water. Hold on. So he ends up asking Jax, like, what y'all be talking about in this chat? And Jax was like, I mean, it really started at Schwartz and Katie's wedding back in 2016. Kristen was like, they be sending pictures of strippers' vaginas. And Brittany says they be in there degrading women. Jax is the head. He's the head of that. Jesse, I can see doing it. Who else is in there? Jesse, I can see doing it. Jax, I can see doing it. I wonder if Sandoval was in it at one point. I could see him doing it. Schwartz, I can low-key see doing it. Brock, I can low-key see doing that. Jason, I can low-key see doing it too. But Zack then says like he was in it at one point but left out of it because of those reasons that Kristen and Brittany just stated. But Danny says he's no longer in the chat. Obviously, they kicked him out the night that he spilled the beans about Jesse saying that shit about Michelle. So Andy ends up asking Brittany, like, what did you see in them texts while you were still with Jax? And she was like, I mean, I saw everything. He was even talking shit about Jesse to the point where I don't even think he really likes Jesse. Jesse, wake up. Jax was like, basically, the chat is locker room talk that tells you everything that's in it. But Andy then addresses Danny telling Luke about Jesse talking shit about Michelle, pretty much saying that she is fucking a billionaire for $1,500 a night. So Danny states that he felt like they had wrapped filming, even though he knew he had the mic on. He thought the cameras were down. Janet's over there making slick comments. I'm like, Janet, stand on it. If you really gonna say it with your chest. She's like, we all know how mics work. He's an actor. Okay. But Andy then asked like why Jesse said it about her in the first place, and does he even believe it? He says no, he didn't believe it, but he regretted it after sending it. And I'm like, if you didn't believe it, why would you say it? Like, why would you say it if you don't believe it? But Andy then talks to Michelle about her telling the girls that Jesse be spending her money and that he's broke. And she was like, yeah, I said it. I was like, but he says that I'm doing fine. She says, so who's been paying your rent? She says, I mean, it's okay to admit it. But he then says, like, we talked about the two of us finding a place at this point, finding a new place. Michelle was like, you said that you weren't leaving the house and I needed to leave, even though we both rent this house out together. And she was like, I started sleeping downstairs like you pretty much had asked while you were sleeping up in the master. And she was like, it got to the point where it got too much. I moved out. We had a lease agreement. You wanted me to pay you, so I paid the rent from my place and your place. That's basically what she's saying. Like, it became unbearable to the point where I left and ended up paying 2 rents. So I helped you make your bills. And he was like, okay. He didn't deny it, so she's probably telling the truth. But Andy then mentions how she had said that the more money that he makes, the more douchey he became. And he pretty much owns up to the fact that he's always been a douche. That is believable. But Andy then moves to Jax, checking himself into the treatment facility, the mental health treatment facility, which he needs to go back to. And he probably needs to live there. And asks, like, what led you to that? This whole scene, Brittany was standing on business. I don't care for Brittany, but I was definitely... Good for you. But he mentions how Brittany and Jax, when they were separated, he starts talking about that whole timeline before they started filming and how they got into that fight. So he then talks about the text that pretty much started it. Jax's friend Julian, who we also know is Lala's ex, Brittany, and then seeing Julian makes me understand why Jax was so mad. You could tell Julian probably makes Jax feel very insecure, which is funny. Good for you, Brittany. But Brittany then states like she started seeing Julian a month after they separated, and Jax was like, no, it was quicker than that. And she was like, no, it was 1 month. So Andy then asked Jax about what pretty much was established between the two of them about dating in the friend circle. And he pretty much states like, we didn't really set a rule. I just assumed, and it just was hurtful. Y'all didn't set any rules, so you can't really hold her accountable. Yes, the decent thing to do is to not date within your circle, especially when it's a friend of yours. But we talking about you. You would do it, so I'm not even mad at Brittany for doing it. Do what you got to do, Brittany. Because he damn sure would do it to you. But he then states that he also went against what Brittany had said. Like I just said, he's had multiple women in that house. Brittany says, yeah, multiple. But Brittany then states like he was extremely aggressive. She gets more in detail in regards to what happened that day. He threw a coffee table and it bruised her knee immediately, threw 2 bar stools, broke her Stanley Cup, broke her phone, laptop, and then threw her ass in the bushes. That's alleged, but because she said, I don't know for sure, but I believe her. He denies pushing her, but he didn't deny the rest of that stuff, which tells me you probably pushed her. But she was like, it's on the ring camera. Kristen says she saw it as well. A couple of the girls did as well. But Brittany then states that her and Julian just hooked up a couple times. But her confidence essentially was at an all-time low because Jax had constantly body shamed her, and Julian actually made her feel sexy and made her feel beautiful. I can believe that because we've seen how Jax be talking about her. We've seen it. I can believe him. I can believe her saying that he calls her fat, tells her. I can see all of that shit happening. But Jax then says while he was dealing with talking about Julian, while he was dealing with other girls, you was fucking him, and you can tell Brittany only did that to feel good about herself. You could tell she wasn't really trying to build some long-term relationship with Julian. If she just want to have casual sex with that man, as long as she's protected, if he's doing that with other women, she could do that with other men too. So if they know what it is, they know what it is. Why are you worried about it? Y'all weren't together at that point. But Jax then states that Brittany says it doesn't matter. He gave me the attention that I needed because you made me lose my sparkle. And Jax is over there talking about the sparkle, which sparkle does sound funny as a grown woman. But I mean, we get what she's saying. And he's, of course, being petty and childish and immature. But he's making those side comments. He's like, I'm not arguing with you, trying to be like condescending with her and passive aggressive. So she then states, but you still sitting here making these side comments, which he is. But she then states, I mean, I had your son and then you turn around and body shame me about my stretch marks. That is insane. That is actually insane. Like, you ain't shit. Like, we know he ain't shit, but he just proves it every single episode. But he's denying it. The girls are backing Brittany, which we all know is true. We all know it's true. But Zack is down there talking too, and Jax, of course, addresses him and says, keep your mouth shut. You all the way down there. Keep your mouth shut. You're not a part of it. Jasmine was like, we literally saw the text. Like, we're going to say what we said when we saw it. But Brittany then states, this is not funny, but I'm not going to lie to y'all. When she said it, I hollered. It was just a natural just burst of energy out of me. I died laughing hearing it. It's not funny though. It's fucked up to say this, and it's gonna be my thumbnail. Brittany says that he called her a tree trunk because of her stretch marks. That's crazy. That is crazy. Extremely rude for somebody who literally spent 9 months carrying your child. That's crazy. Any woman that wants to deal with Jax, you need to fix your life. Fix your life. But he says that he's sitting there trying to deny that he said it. We all know he did. But he claims that he's sorry about it all. Now he's trying to play the victim role, trying to take it back. This isn't how I wanted it to go. I couldn't control it. Brittany was like, we literally started filming. You know what it is to film. But Andy then talks about how Brittany has low graded his sex game on Watch What Happens Live. And Kristen's like, that's her ex-husband. Why wouldn't she do that? But Jackson says, like, when you're in a toxic relationship, you no longer have interest. Pretty much trying to state I wasn't performing that well because I wasn't really interested in her. Granted, I can't believe that too, but she was like, we barely had sex in 3 years. Like, he ain't really doing shit. But he then says that he pushed her away. The drugs and alcohol, he was doing all of that to get her away and make her leave him, which, Brittany, you should have realized then, like, but especially hearing that now, that should tell you should never even give him any more attention. But he started stating that it was getting to the point where he felt like it all started, like his whole spiraling was when he got fired from Vanderpump Rules. And she was like, yeah, and you started taking that shit out on me, crashing out on me because I was the one that was making more money. And Andy was like, shouldn't you be happy about that? Like her bringing in money while you just got fired. And he was like, yeah, I mean, as a man, the issue is I want to be the one supporting my family, which I mean, I understand it. But she then says, like, it shouldn't have been a competition between the two of us because we are a team, we're a family. That also is true. But he's sitting there trying to victimize himself per usual. And Brittany was like, he literally acted this way. What happened with the whole throwing the coffee table? That was not the only time it happened. It happened before, which, Brittany, I'm telling you, you need to, I'm glad you finally standing on it, but you should have never you should have never been in that relationship that long if it's happened multiple times before. The first time it happens, you need to get up out of there because as you see, it's going to keep happening. But she said that she essentially forgave him because she loved him. And she was like, you treated me worse than anybody else. And I was the only one that loved you enough to make you go get help. And Andy was like asking about like the co-parenting agreement. We find out that Brittany has full custody, as you should. Good for you. The divorce, when the divorce gets finalized, she's going to allow him to have one Wednesday and every other weekend. And like if she has to go run errands and stuff, he can go watch Cruise. And she was like, essentially, I'm never going to be at the point where I'm not going to allow him to see his son as long as he's passing them drug tests. And Jax was like, I mean, I don't want to uproot my son from his home. And Brittany starts laughing, as I did too. Because Brittany said exactly what I was thinking. You saying this, yet you had me and your autistic son out here hopping from Airbnbs while you sitting here trying to stay in the house, but you claim that you don't want to uproot your son from a happy home, but you're making them go bounce from house to house. And then she brings up too, you didn't even pay the mortgage for 7 months, and he doubles down on it, talking about something, I didn't pay the car note either. Shut up. But Andy then moves to what made Jax go seek help. And he was like, my job and my son. Like, my job was on the line with the show and my son. Those are the only two things that are most important to me. I said, Brittany, wake up, because you're not included in that. But Andy then says that he went to rehab twice. And he was like, yeah, because I relapsed 2 weeks afterwards. And Brittany says, no, it was in the same week. I believe her. But he tries to minimize how much drugs and alcohol plays a part in his issues with his anger. And which cracked me up because I'm like, the audacity of you to sit here and try and do what you did with Danny, knowing that you have those issues and more. Those issues and more is rich. It's rich. But he claims that he's been sober for 156 days at the time. I wonder where he at now. But Brittany then states, like, you've been sober except for the weed, but I'm not worried about the weed. He says he can't stop smoking the weed. But Brittany then says that she gives him drug tests sporadically. And he claims that she only does it twice. She says, I literally get a text every single Monday from a guy. And he was like, yeah, I made it a point to make sure that he calls you. And Brittany was like, no, who's the person that made it happen? He says, nobody. But she then asks, are you on steroids? He denies it. She then says, like, your personality is so sporadic and it's so spastic. So if you're not on these substances, like we've seen to be a pattern as to why your anger happens, why are you still acting this way? Because he's just a shitty person. He probably is still on the substances, but at the core, he's a shitty person. Like, you can't change that. You can't change that. But Andy then says, apparently you've worked on your anger. I don't believe it. But she's stating it hasn't changed. I believe her. But he then claims that it's gotten a lot better. Don't believe it. Brittany says some days it does, some days it doesn't. So she then talks about how on Easter they had a very, very good day. But the very next day he started a fight with her for no reason, started going through her shit, going through her trash and stuff, trying to find out what guys she's been dealing with, looking for condoms, being aggressive. And Andy was like, so if you were on steroids, it would be detrimental to your anger issues. And he claims that he's not on anything, and he tells her that he wants her to keep drug testing him because it holds him accountable. You're almost 50, Jax. You should be able to hold your own self accountable. Why should she have to be the one doing it? But he starts turning them waterworks on, trying to cry, trying to victimize himself. Ain't nobody buying that shit. He tries to humanize himself, which, I mean, like, at the end of the day, he is a human, but Jax, I don't feel like he got a soul. Like he got an issue, and it's him. But that was part one, y'all. Please, 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 if you thug through it with all that blinking and stuff, you a real one. But please thumbs up the video. Drop your comments down below. Subscribe if you are new. I will see y'all tomorrow night. Peace.